Oh, great.
It's a, you know, it really does depend.
Okay, well, I got the moment this time. Yeah, like math and English. Actually, oh, I could not do these.
Okay, so let's do one more minute, and then I'll give you some time to work in here. Maybe I won't do another minute.
I don't recall, but there's still.
But I don't think that I'm
So long ago. Back in the day when I was.
By the way, Otis Taylor. So good to be him.
James said here.
That'd be pretty cool. So we got the myths. Can we go? By the way, once again. So we'll do another couple minutes, and then I'll give you time to work. I love the myths. I love, and they're fun. You go through just. I can do a quick little thing. Some are a little bit longer. The George Washington one is such a great one. I love the. To teach kids to be honest, we'll lie to them. But it's more than that. It's the great man theory. And by the way, isn't that just the pointing? That's supposed to be parson weenies. So with that, where are we at here? Let's go to. Do we get to this?
Yes.
So let's do a little bit about this. We talked about the Puritans and the Separatists. And no, they did not come here for religious freedom. In fact, part of the Salem witch trials was when the old Puritans were starting to lose their hold over the colony. And the way to control it is they started finding scapegoats for their problems. And women are handy scapegoats, especially unmarried women. There must be something wrong with them. And there was a witch craze across Europe. Anywhere from 3,000 to 30,000 witches were executed across Europe in the years before, in this era, 1670 to 1700. Witch mania. So let's get to another one. Have you heard of Plymouth Rock? That's when the Separatists landed on. And these were the Pilgrims. They broke away from the Puritans who were not strong enough. And supposedly, the story was when their boat arrived, and there it is, but do you know what? They actually had a couple different galleys lined up, and only one made it. Anybody knew what the Pilgrims arrived on? The Mayflower, yeah. If you go to go to Plymouth now, Massachusetts, they have a replica of the Mayflower. It's really cool. You can walk through it, and also very claustrophobic. I think you rode for 5 weeks in this thing. But the story was, and they still make a big deal about it, that's the picture of it. In 1620, they jumped off the boat and proclaimed, this is our land, this will be our city on the hill, and they stepped off on this big rock. And that became this whole story of this rock came to signify the solid ground that they would create in America. I know. Did they really step on this rock? Well, maybe. It's a big rock. I mean, rocks are there. I'm sure they walked on it. It had nothing to do with the Pilgrims. In the 1880s, just as the story of the name Pilgrims was being used, and they wanted to get people to go to Plymouth, they found this big rock when they were shifting around, kind of trying to extend the beach, and they said, Plymouth Rock. And thus the myth of Plymouth Rock was formed. There's this big monument around it, and you can go take a picture of that, and they carved it in 1620. Yes?
Do they even know that people step on that said rock?
No idea. I mean, it's a big rock, and so probably, because rocks tend to be old. They had no idea. Completely made up. And so that's one of the myths of the Pilgrims. In fact, the Pilgrims are going to become like these great founders of America. I should add about the Puritans. my distant relatives, the first partridges arrived in about 1645 in Massachusetts. They were Puritans. Hmm? I was already here. And yeah, we've traced the partridges. Someone who was into. I've read it all, but my mother-in-law is really into genealogy, so that's about the 13th century. Partridges. And so with that, yeah, so I'm going to go back to Britain, so I'm going to go to various partridge places. Say, hey, here I am. Okay. No, I was not there. Boy, this me as an old guy is becoming a problem. Okay. So let's get to another one. Massachusetts was this wild wilderness. And this is going to be one of the key elements of the myth, that when they arrived, when the Pilgrims and the Puritans arrived, it was this wilderness that was made for them by God. Remember, they're intensely religious. That it's all there is this huge wilderness. Why am I doing this? Because I want to. And this wilderness that is theirs. And the point is, that is the wilderness that was promised to them. And the people living there were either somebody that was they're not the true owners to be brushed aside, or wasting the land. But actually, this was not true at all. And I was told this when I did my little. I remember learning about the first Thanksgiving as a little boy. I was waiting for someone to say, "Weren't you there?" Well, yeah, that I was there. And they came into this wild wilderness. No, there were many tribes all over. The Wampanoags, and this is a painting of the Wampanoags. They were there. They had a huge slave, don't say slave, trade empire. They traded, they fished. But well before the Pilgrims arrived, English fishermen had already arrived, and slave traders. Fishermen would land and dry their fish on the shore of New England as early as the 1590s. And slave traders from New Spain, Cuba, Hispaniola, were coming all the way up to Newfoundland up in Canada. Up here. They were going all the way up to there. And so there was contact with Europeans. But what did the Europeans bring? And that disease ravaged them. 2 huge plagues ran through New England and killed about 98% of the population of what's going to become New England. So that means everything from Rhode Island, Connecticut, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, and what's going to become Maine. Huh? See, I was it. Oh no! I got a little bit European, so I didn't mean to do it. It's actually probably the measles. Just kill them all. And so when they arrived, they're gone. There's no one there. But actually, this is not true. Their villages remained. And so they built Plymouth on an abandoned village. And they used farmland that had been cleared by the Wampanoags to farm there. You go to Plymouth, that is built on the graves of those who died. And they came across bodies just strewn all over who died. And so what they really thought was this glorious plague was for us. This land was cleared for us. Clearly, we are the chosen one. We are the elect. We are blessed. We're going to heaven. Remember I mentioned predestination. It was already decided at birth. And to the Puritans and the separatists, everyone died. We get this land. This proves we are the blessed. Which actually is kind of scary, isn't it? If you think you're the elect, doesn't that mean it's kind of like a get out of jail free card? Can't you do anything you want because I'm going to heaven? So with that, want one more? Oh, let's do one more. I got to do Squanto. To Squanto. I remember this story. Do you remember the story of, it was always Squanto, even though it was probably to Squanto. It was closer. There was a Wampanoag who met them there and helped them. Have you heard that story? I was told when I was in elementary school, it was Squanto. because that was what everybody was told. And you know, it's the myth. And he would help the separatists plant their crops, teach them how to fertilize them, teach them how to grow this wondrous crop called maize, and help them out, help them survive. And this would become kind of the backbone to this whole story of eventually Thanksgiving. So that was the story of Squanto. And here they are. He would help engineer a peace agreement with the various tribes. That is a very stylized picture of Squanto. In the Thanksgiving play, that was a prominent role, and I wanted to be Squanto. I just turned out to be, in the play I did in 3rd grade, a guy sitting around the fire hammering on something. I gotta admit, I carried it off. I mean, I stole the scene.
So we did a reenactment.
I should do that.
Were you there so you know exactly what happened?
Yeah, and that was a thing.
Yeah.
I took it from my memory.
So were you like actually one of the people then sitting around the fire and then you just got cast as yourself?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
You know, I didn't in. So, actually, to Squantimus is real. That's probably closer to how it's spelled. And he has an amazing history. So this myth of this, and the whole idea is that, you know, Squanto saw these wondrous people and realized that, hey, you're taking away my paper.
Yeah, sorry.
Want it? No, I'm joking. And how you doing? So he saw that this was the future and I must join with them. So that's a part of the, you know, we are great. This European culture is great and the other culture was inferior. Well, it's an amazing story. Squantum was actually, and this shows Squantum where I got this map, he was kidnapped by fishermen and enslaved and brought back to England, was a slave there, made his way to Spain, went back with other fishermen, went back again with other fishermen, went back again to Newfoundland, went back again. And he was quite the traveler. And he threw his, and he went back essentially to scout here for the pilgrims or for the separatists. And he got back to, and he basically was, I'll go back and scout. He agreed, even though he was technically a slave, so he could go back home. When he got back home, everybody was dead. Everybody in his village was gone. And so when the separatists arrived, he's alone. So he must have had immunities. He's one of the few that survived. And that shows the whole complexity of this. Amazing story. You ever get a chance, that text it, Plymouth is right there. Okay, so that's a good place to quit. No, the Puritans did not wear all black. No, they did not have big buttons.
The hats too.
No, they didn't.
What?
I know. They had hats, but they wore all kinds of colors. Black was actually really expensive dye because it required a bunch of different dyes together. So a cheap dye would have been brown. And no, they're not. And they would wear red or all kinds of colors. And they got married in the nude. Okay, so on that note, I'll give you the rest of the period to work.
We have some elaboration on that one. Like what was
Kind of
the reason?
elaboration.
Yeah, what do you mean?
Well, how do you know? Like, yeah, are you there?
How do you think I know? And oh no, here's the thing. So the Puritans, you know, think about the Puritans and how they really tried to, since it proved they're all blessed, they had all controls about what they could do in their life. Couldn't drink, couldn't gamble, couldn't dance, because we're showing we're blessed. We're the chosen ones. But they also believed that if you got married in the nude, all your debts would be absolved.
What?
Your debts. So roll the die. And I think about it. It was a little bit colder back then, and winters were really harsh there, and they wore these clothes. So you just imagine these just think about these shockingly like glowing white bodies getting married, shivering. That's all I can imagine. Everyone's just being really uncomfortable. They were putting it on. Okay, so you have a little bit of time to work. We'll do a few more myths on Tuesday.
don't know if you got, you think, does 8A deserve them?
No, they can do it outside.
Yeah.